All right, here we go. Today on the podcast, we're talking about gratitude. I have a very special guest today, Dr. Peggy Doherty DeLong, which I didn't ask you. Am I saying that name correctly?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm going to say that again. Today we have Dr. Peggy Doherty DeLong, the gratitude psychologist, here with us, and she is grateful to be a mom to three young adults and interested in the mental health of this generation. She's a keynote speaker on happiness, resilience, grief, and gratitude to help people live their best lives. That includes speaking at the World Gratitude Summit with Jack Canfield and Hal Elrod. She's grateful to be a memoir writer who highlights the power of gratitude, love, and nature for healing emotional pain. She's an adventure seeker who loves the thrill of skiing down steep mountains, but who also loves the peace of soaking in a sunset from a kayak. She's grateful to be a therapist and an empath who feels deeply for clients, and a believer that we live fully and more joyfully when we can feel, process, learn, and grow from our emotional pain. So, of course, your bio is written from a gratitude perspective. It is so nice to have you on the show, Dr. Peggy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I think the most appropriate question to ask you is, why do you love gratitude so much?
I love gratitude because it is free. It's accessible to all of us at any time of day. It feels good in the moment when we're practicing gratitude. And when we do it regularly, it has long-term benefits for mental health.
I always love things that are free and easy to do, that we could, even do in the line at the store or anywhere. And there's so many things that we can access, that we have in us, but I don't think that we automatically go there and, think to take advantage of some of these things that we have at our disposal all the time. You have mentioned that happiness is more than a choice, that positive mental health takes work. So I'd like to talk about that because I think we have to be intentional about being grateful and filling our lives with happiness and joy. So what do you have to say about that?
I love that. Yes, it's absolutely about being intentional. And that kind of follows what I talk about with my framework of the 4 Ps when I'm talking about mental health. The 4 Ps stands for prioritize, plan, practice, prosper. So we need to prioritize our mental health, plan health promoting activities, practice them often, and then we will prosper even during difficult times. So what we do today sets us up for positive mental health in the future. And I like to teach methods that feel good while we're doing them. So things like gratitude and connecting to joy, speaking with complete strangers. I truly believe there's no such thing as small talk. And when we call it small talk, it just makes us feel that it's insignificant. But the research shows us otherwise, that when we connect with other people, even complete strangers at the checkout line at the grocery store, it matters. And the more that we're able to choose people over machines, so instead of going on the self-checkout line, choose the lane that has a real person with a name tag, and then using that person's name tag to say hello, even talking about the weather. It doesn't matter. That's not small talk. It all matters. It makes us feel seen. It makes us feel part of our communities and connected to the world.
That's so interesting. I will definitely think about that next time I'm in ShopRite because we all
Yes.
gravitate towards those machines. And you know what? They're a pain in the neck. They always malfunction. They never
Yes.
work right.
Well, and it's a missed opportunity for human connection. I was listening to a podcast episode once. I think it's the Happiness Lab, and she had on an expert who had invented the ATM, and he said it was one of his greatest regrets that he invented the ATM. He thought that people would be happier by saving time, and truly, what makes people happier is human connection. So anytime that we think about our daily life that we're replacing technology with human interaction, it's worth figuring out how we can connect with other people, even if it takes longer. That results in more happiness than saving time.
And I'm just thinking of all of the ways that we've replaced human connection face to face with technology. I mean,
Yes.
it's mind blowing, especially for our youngsters, like the youth. I mean, it's just a whole nother world than it was even 10 years ago.
Yes, yes. And the way things have moved with technology, in some ways, it's almost impossible to get human interaction. But the more that you can just simply be, so that's why, like when you said intentional, the more you can be intentional about it, you will find ways so that the next time you are at the grocery store, if you're intentional about human connection, you'll be more inclined to choose the lane with a checkout with a clerk as opposed to the automated machines.
Definitely. It's just a little different way of thinking. I don't know. I never thought of it that way, but I will next time I'm in the store. I
Yes.
love prioritizing, planning, practicing, and prospering. I think the more you do it, it's like anything, it is a practice, and it's a change of mindset.
Yes.
Um, in your book, we're going to talk about your book, Feeling Good, quite a bit. It's an amazing book. I'm going to be linking everything in the show notes, and I think I'm going to be giving away a copy after this episode airs because it's a great it's a great read. I encourage everyone to check it out. So, in your book, you say that you've worked with busy mothers and teens in your private practice for years, and you notice some resistance to finding joy. And you hear excuses like, I'm too busy, I have too much homework, there's no time to do what I really love, I don't even know what brings me joy anymore. And that's selfish. I've got kids who need me. I've used some of those excuses. I'm pretty sure we all have. It really struck a chord with me, being too busy to find joy. I mean, when you say it out loud, it's like, well, what are you so busy doing then? Because I think you're missing the mark quite a bit, right? It's a huge red flag.
Yes.
So, can you talk to us about everyone listening is probably like, oh, yeah, I am too busy, or they've had these excuses go through their head before. So, what can we do to reframe that? Because it is definitely a mindset piece here.
Sure. Well, I think first, before implementing joy, so often we need to get over those statements that simply aren't true, and then also to work through any barriers that might be preventing you from accessing joy. So, let's say, for example, you love to paint, and then if for a half hour or you have an hour of free time, but you haven't painted in years and you don't have any supplies, then you can't paint. So, it also we go back to being intentional, and so incorporating joy into your life and planning for it, and that's where that planning comes into place. You need to be make sure that you have access to these supplies. And also, when talking about planning, I'm not just thinking about it as listing as an activity to do, but put it into your calendar and making that commitment to yourself for joy, just like you would with a doctor's appointment or going for a run or a yoga class. Or those are joyful also, but something that is just for you that brings you joy. Joy is so underrated, and we need joy to get through our lives. It makes our lives more meaningful. It helps us get through difficult times. And when we have things that we can look forward to with predictability, it really does help with resilience and just to get through a day sometimes. So, so important to have joy. And when I'm working with people, so many people have lost access to joy and forget what previously brought them joy. So, one of the activities that I suggest people to do is just to think about your childhood. What brought you joy in your childhood? What may have you given up because either you didn't have time, thought you didn't have, or that it was too childlike or childish. So often we just stop doing things because we put a limit that, or we just think that's for kids. But there's so many things that can bring us joy that adults can do, and that's why I love that there has been, coloring books for adults has become more popular. Because the research shows that it's very relaxing and it's not just for kids. Playing with Play-Doh, Legos, anything that you may have enjoyed in childhood, there is no reason to stop doing it as an adult. So that's one thing to take a look at. And maybe what have you always yearned to do but felt that there wasn't enough time? Taking ice skating lessons or dance lessons, learning how to paint, and then seeking out ways to find that either through clubs in town. Libraries have all sorts of wonderful programs, craft stores like Michael's, and really tapping into all of that can, all these places offer for something that you may have always longed to do. And then I like to suggest to people that you think of joy and activities that bring you joy in three columns. One column is 5 to 10 minutes. What are things that you can do really quickly that even if you only have 5 to 10 minutes, you can still do them? And then the middle column, what might be things that take 30 minutes to a half hour, and list those activities out. And then in the other last column, What are things that take a half a day or maybe a full day? And really write down everything that you can think of. And then the next step is, what tools might you need? What supplies might you need to get, and making sure that you have that. And then in the 5 to 10 minute column, making it a point, being really intentional about doing those things every day. We all can find, and not just find, but create 5 minutes a day and do those things, whether it's 5 to 10 minutes of reading, 5 to 10 minutes of lying down and just listening to your favorite music, things that are really quick that can bring you joy. And then in the middle column, trying to do those a couple times a week. And then in the other column, things that take a half a day or a full day, making the time to do that once a week or once every 2 weeks. And you will be amazed at what it does for mental health when we not just find the time, but create it, put it into our calendars and make it a priority. And then it just becomes habit. So it starts with intention, and then over the course of time, it becomes habit.
These are such great things to think about and to incorporate. And like you said, 5 to 10 minutes a day. I think I was reading the part of your book where you were mentioning back when you were in grad school and you were working and you were commuting to classes and you were almost never home. But you mentioned that you had a 20-minute gap between your two classes and you always made sure to do something that you enjoyed, whether it was like
Yes.
going to grab a bite with a friend or coffee or something or walk around, so that it made it more fun and it made the long, long day a lot more enjoyable. And then you had that little thing to look forward to.
Absolutely. Yes. So that predictability of knowing that it's coming and planning. So I knew if I was doing that and I didn't have shoes that were comfortable and I wanted to go for a walk, I would make sure to pack something. Um, and, it takes planning. The positive mental health doesn't just happen. It starts with intention, but then when you do make these things habit, it just feels part of your being. And that's what I love about these simple things, particularly gratitude. That gratitude doesn't involve any tool. You don't need sneakers or supplies. It's accessible at any minute. And when you practice gratitude on a regular basis, you truly are forming new neural pathways in your brain to be a more positive thinker. So it starts with intention, and then your brain picks up and does the rest for you. So the world doesn't change, but the lens in which you see the world changes simply through those new neural pathways that have formed in your brain by starting with a daily practice of gratitude.
Wow, it's fascinating, the brain science and how it adapts. And it's probably happens pretty fast, I would
It's
imagine.
it's amazing how quickly. One study looked at 70-year-old men who considered themselves low-level pessimists, and they were very resistant to doing a gratitude journal practice. And the researcher, Sean Aker, had them just try 21 days of writing in a gratitude journal. And after those 21 days, they rated themselves as low-level optimists. So 70 years, they considered themselves pessimists their entire lives, and simply 21 days later, complete shift to low-level optimist. That's really, really powerful. And
Wow.
and then when you continue, it's just amazing what happens after that. And the other beautiful part about gratitude is that it's kind of contagious. That when you share what you're grateful for, other people benefit. And it's one of the activities that I encourage my clients to do is called team gratitude, where you just pick one person in your life, particularly somebody that you'd like to maybe rekindle a relationship or get closer to somebody. And each day you share your ideas about what you're grateful for. And this is really powerful because, in itself, gratitude is so helpful for mental health, but it automatically builds in human interaction into your day. And human connection is the number one predictor of happiness. So when you're doing gratitude with somebody else, you're benefiting in two ways. So you get to hear what somebody else is grateful for, and that other person gets to hear what you're grateful for. And when it helps to keep you accountable, because you're not going to let your friend down by sharing. And people have reported such wonderful outcomes of connecting in relationships. Simply by sharing what they're grateful for. So you could pick a week, but most people feel so good doing it that they extend it to a month. And I've even had people do that for an entire year. So it's a really powerful, simple gratitude practice, team gratitude.
Team gratitude. I love it. Oh my gosh, I took so many notes as you were talking because you're saying there's so many gems in here. Positive mental health doesn't just happen. Human connection is the number one predictor of happiness. These are kind of blowing my mind a little bit, especially the human connection, because I feel like it's obviously underrated. I mean, I had no idea it was the number one predictor of happiness. And we've gotten so far away from that. The younger generation doesn't even know how to connect with with each other very well. I mean, that's something that I know I'm working on a lot, especially with my youngest, having gone through COVID and the formative years of kindergarten, first grade. They need to learn how to look each other in the eye again and talk
Yes.
and have their own original thoughts because they got away from that. But all of this, incorporating joy and planning for it and putting it into our calendars. I was listening to someone recently and they were saying, don't say you don't have time because we all have 24 hours in a day, every single one of us. So it's truly a matter of making the time, managing your time, like you said, planning, remembering to bring those sneakers when you know you're going to have a half hour and you want to get a walk in. Those things don't take a lot of time, but they do take a lot of intention. So just shifting the way we think a little bit will have such dramatic positive impacts on our life. I mean, um, going back to what brings us joy, a few years ago, I started to really do a deep dive into all of this stuff. I knew my life was moving at a pace that was way too fast, and I wanted to slow things down, and I wanted to recapture joy and all of it. And it took me a little while to remember what brought me joy. Because as adults, like you were saying, think back to your childhood. I think that's a really great tip. As adults, we have so many things on our to-do list that aren't necessarily joyful, although you're giving us ideas how to make them more full of joy, that we forget like these fun little things. For me, one of my best memories of being a kid was just riding my bike, the freedom and the independence, riding down a hill, feeling the wind. So once in a while, I get on a bike now and I ride with my kids, and it's so much fun.
Yes.
So much
Yes.
fun. And we took a big family vacation this summer. We were out in Scotland. We did this Isle of Skye tour. It was beautiful. We were truly in God's country. I mean, it was just these green mountains and the open sky. And we were with 16 people on this tour for a few days. My family was the youngest by far. We were the only ones that had children on the trip. So I think at first they were looking at us like, oh, great, there's kids on this bus. But we stopped at a lot of lakes, as they call them, locks out in Scotland. So we stopped at a lot of locks along the way. And my son, who's 12, what would he do? He'd skip rocks at every single one of them. I mean, he was finding flat rocks. He's pocketing them for the next stop. And we were laughing because he did it a few times by himself, and sometimes his younger sister would join him. But by the end of the trip, all of the older men were also skipping rocks at all of the lock stops. And it was so much fun to watch. You could see their eyes laid up. They were having so much fun. Their wives were cracking up, getting such a kick out of it because they were all acting like little boys. It was great.
That is great. And when we think about those things, we can incorporate them into our day in such simple ways. And in my book, I talk about skipping in particular and singing. So we often think that those things are associated with joy and being and fun. So when you think about a child skipping on the playground, they're not frowning. They very likely have a big smile. And the same thing with singing. But we can also generate that joy through intention. So if you want to boost in mood, skip down the hallway. The movement will elevate your mood and bring joy. And the same thing happens with music. When we sing out loud or hum, we can generate joy. So we often think that we sing because we're happy, but we can also become happier by singing. So it works both ways.
Wow. I didn't know that. I wonder if that's why occasionally not every yoga practice does it, but sometimes they'll do that om at the end. I wonder if it's something similar.
Yes, and there's some other science behind that about that particular sound that's a little
Mhm.
bit different from what I'm talking about, but similar type thing that we are in control of that, and it's something that we can do that's so simple to generate a positive feeling.
Wow. Those are really great tips. Um, what advice do you have for just taking a step back and trying to be less busy in this fast paced world. Because I think that in order to do these things that we're talking about, to find that space, you need to find the space to be more intentional, be more mindful of what we're doing, how much we're doing it. Any advice for being less busy? Like how do we navigate this? It's tricky.
Yes. I would say probably the simplest but hardest thing would be to monitor phone use. It's unbelievable when we track how much time we spend on the phone. So it might not even be that you meant to go on social media, but something catches your eye, and then all of a sudden 20 minutes have passed. So one of the simplest behavioral changes that I suggest is not keeping the phone on your nightstand. So it's not the last thing you looked at before bed, and it's not the first thing that you look at in the morning. A couple things, because at bedtime in particular, we tend to bring into our sleep what we last thought about, looked at, and we have no control necessarily like over what we see. And to simply substitute that with a gratitude practice instead, reflecting upon your day and thinking about what you're grateful for. One research study found that it significantly improved the quality and duration of sleep simply to think about one thing that you're grateful for. So that's a replacement. Instead of the phone, have a gratitude practice at bedtime. And then when you wake up in the morning, resist that temptation to have the phone be the first thing that you go on, because once again, it could just you get caught up in how much time has passed. But then going about your day, whatever tools that you can use to help prevent you spend less, less as much, not spend as much time on social media and technology, whether that be setting a timer or telling yourself, I'm not going to do technology of any kind between 10 and 2, like whatever works for you, and then sticking to that. The more that you can set guidelines for yourself and for your children, then all of a sudden it feels like you have more time, because we truly do not recognize how much time we spend on technology. Every device is specifically designed for each of us. So when I go on my device, the messages that I see, the ads and different things are specifically for me. And if you to learn more about that, you can see the documentary, The Social Dilemma, which shows all the behind the scenes things that happen with Google and Facebook and everything else to make you stay on the device. They're intentional to make you stay on as long as possible. So the ads that I see are very different from the ads that you will see. They're for me. And of course, or maybe ours are the same because they might be about biking and hiking and nature and things. Like I just bought a hat. They know, Facebook knows I like to hike. So they keep sending me different supplies, new boots and hats and things, and maybe another article. So just being really intentional about how much time is spent, and then it will feel like magically you have more time.
Yeah, we aren't we have no clue how much time we lose to those phones. It's scary. You said 20 minutes. I feel like sometimes it could be 30 minutes or an hour. It's like you look up and you come back to your real world. You're like, what just happened? It's
Right,
you're just gone and you're
right.
not getting that hour back.
Right. And it's not like something is wrong with us. That's the way our brains function. We get a hit of dopamine when we go on
Mhm.
anything and get that quick reward, and it just makes you want more. So it's what's happening in the brain. It's not that somebody lacks willpower or is weak in any way. It's the way our brains are designed, that we truly go to the phone. And what's the saddest part is that it replaces human interaction. And that speaks again to being intentional about finding ways to replace any way that you can to have human connection over a way that might be using technology.
I had notes from your book. You were talking about making a conscious decision to focus on gratitude throughout the day and setting an intention to activate a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And you equated it to our brain's filter, since there's so much to filter through these days. That's what this is making me think of, that with all the social media and the phones. We are bombarded from every single direction from all the information thrown at us. So, any other tips to kind of filtering that out? Because I'd imagine that that's really taxing on our brain too. It must be really exhausting to be constantly filtering all of these messages, all of these different things. And you just think, I notice when my kids look at the phone, or even a computer, they scroll so fast. I have to look away. It gives me a headache. My eyes can't do that. So I can't, I mean, and that's how they all do it. It seems they're super quick on it. So what are some tips? Obviously the best tip is to just put the phone away, not be on it as much. But what else in terms of like filtering through these messages and choosing what we allow in?
Sure. Well, the simplest exercise I call setting your intention at the beginning of the day. So, in terms of speaking about gratitude, what that can look like is just saying to yourself while you're in the shower or brushing your teeth, I'm going to be more aware of my blessings today. Just a simple self statement like that. And it doesn't take any more time of your day. You're doing it while you're already doing an existing behavior that you need to do every day, brushing your teeth, putting on your shoes. So attach it to something that you do already every day so it doesn't take more time. And if you do it with your non-dominant hand, it becomes even more powerful. So if you're brushing your teeth, use your non-dominant hand and say this self-statement to yourself, either out loud or in your head. I'm going to be more aware of my blessings today. And what happens is that part of our brain, the reticular activating system, otherwise known as the RAS, works in your favor. Our RAS does serve as a filter. It helps us to filter out what we want to pay attention to and lets that in and filters out what we don't want to pay attention to. So when we're specifically focused on gratitude, it will help us see more things to be grateful for. The world hasn't changed. Your world didn't magically get better overnight. It's that you have told yourself, this is important to me. I'm going to pay more attention of the great things going on in my life. And then simultaneously filtering out the things that bother you, that you might complain about. So over the course of time, you will find that you don't even notice them anymore. And that is because the reticular activating system is doing its job. You told it what's important to you, and then it kicks in and does that for you, filters out what you don't want to pay attention to, and highlights what you do want to pay attention to. And most people can relate to this concept if you think about being in the market for a new car. So my husband, his pickup truck recently died. All of a sudden, he needed to buy a new car. So just right away thought he wanted a white Jeep Wrangler. Now, before he decided on a white Jeep Wrangler, we really didn't notice the Jeeps on the road. But as soon as he decided that he wanted a white Jeep Wrangler, it seemed like everybody had a white Jeep Wrangler. Now, the world did not increase in Jeep Wranglers. It was that we told our brains, this is important, pay attention. So that's the way the reticular activating system does its job. So it can work with gratitude. It can work if you're trying to drink more water, you're trying to be kinder to people, like whatever you set your intention for, the reticular activating system does its job and helps that come to fruition for you.
It's fascinating. It also works the other way, right? If we are constantly complaining about things and speaking negatively all the time, we are going to bring more of that law of attraction, right?
Absolutely, yes. And that's why I love the book, The Four Agreements. One of the chapters in his book is be impeccable with your word. And what he means by that is to minimize or not at all gossip and talking negatively about yourself, because that just fosters negativity. And we think that complaining and venting is good for us, but the research shows the opposite, that if you're talking about a problem and if it has a solution, then it's helpful. But venting for the sake of venting is not. It only fosters negativity. So keep that in mind. If you have a problem and you want to vent with a friend, have it end with a solution. Talk about how you benefited from talking about it. That's where the power is, not just through venting.
Wow. We're training our brain to just see a different world. Like you said, it's a world that's already there. This world all of a sudden didn't just get 100 more white Jeep Wranglers. It's just what we see. So it's retraining the brain.
Absolutely, yes.
Amazing we can do that.
It is. It's really powerful. And when you understand how the brain works, and that we can use it in our favor in the simplest of ways that start with intention, but then become effortless.
And a lot of those thoughts that we have, like our unconscious thoughts, I know we have so many of those every day, more than the conscious ones. these have been ingrained in us for decades, forever, since we were little, just the way that we were raised or the things that we picked up along the way. So I think a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it one way or the other. So becoming more
Yes.
aware, right?
Right. And all the more reason to take on a gratitude practice and work toward developing a more positive mindset, because the human condition is to think negatively. The National Science Foundation came out with a very popular study in 2005 that found that for the average person, 80% of our thoughts during the day are negative, and 95% are the same as the day before. So each of us gets stuck in this loop of negative thinking. We each have our own. It's different for each person, but it's just this constant negative thought that keeps popping up, or a bunch of them. And that's the human condition. And some people are just better at overcoming that than others. And gratitude is one of the easy, beautiful ways to overcome that. It's called negativity bias, to overcome that type of thinking. And it starts with intention and then becomes effortless. Like, I don't really think about being grateful anymore. I just am. It's so much a part of my being, but it started with intention.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's so powerful that we have that many repeated negative thoughts every day.
It
Got to
is
start
very.
repeating more positive.
Yes, yes, we need to be and then intentional about counteracting that negativity bias.
So I think that being intentional starts obviously from the moment we open our eyes. And I know that you were on I know you were on Hal Elrod's podcast. He's the king of the morning routine. I read his books. There's multiple Miracle Morning. So do you have a specific morning routine that you follow?
I do. I practice what I preach and am intentional. It's made a huge difference in my life not to go on my phone first thing in the morning, so that that time is for me. There's no intrusion in my thoughts. And I typically like to have a positive thought about the day, something that I'm looking forward to. And my morning routine also has exercise. It's really helpful. There's so much connected to the power of walking. And I love that one of the benefits of the pandemic is that psychologists have studied walking. Often when you hear people talk about walking, they will put the word just in front of it. I just went for a walk. Oh, that's just a walk. Walking is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves, physically, mentally, immune functioning. We get more bang for our buck through walking than anything else. And a great person researcher Shane O'Mara is a great expert on the power of walking. And he has been on the Mel Robbins podcast, the Feel Better, Live More podcast, talking about walking. So I like to do, like, I intuitively know that walking, I've always been a walker, but I love the research behind it, just to make me do, on the days that I don't feel like doing it, it's a reminder of how powerful that walk is. So that's part of my morning routine also. And I also like to start with expressing appreciation for somebody every day. So I start, if I'm opening up my email, I send out a positive email before I even look at anything. I think about one person who I'd like to reconnect with, and either by text or email, just shoot a very simple thank you for something. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. Just a really wonderful way to start the day, especially when I learned that through somebody else's research that about 80% of people hold their breath when they open up email in the morning. Just you just anticipate all the work coming your way, and the heaviness that you're just going to be overflowing after you start opening up the email, that most people, 80%, hold their breath. So one way to counteract that is to open it up and then intentionally send out a positive email.
Wow. My jaw is like on the floor with all of these statistics, because I love the science and the research behind everything. I mean, I love what you're saying. You don't even have to back it up with research, but the research is fascinating and it really makes you think. And I mean, we probably all do that. I'll have to notice next time tomorrow morning when I open my email up if I'm tense.
Yes, I had no idea. And a lot of people are holding that tension in their jaw, and shoulders, and getting headaches, and jaws being out of alignment. So when we soften a little bit, and it's a one way gratitude also releases serotonin from our brain. So, in addition to dopamine, which helps us elevate mood, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that is responsible for that feeling of enough. Like after you've eaten a great meal or had a wonderful conversation with a close friend, that's serotonin. So, gratitude does that as well. So, another reason to be expressing gratitude.
Absolutely. Wow. So, as we wind down today, what would you say one happiness hack would be that you can share with the listeners?
Oh boy.
I mean, to be honest, you've shared quite a few, but give us one more.
uh, that would be the power of nature. What I love about nature is that we don't need to do anything. Nature does its job. So I've gone through difficult times in my life. My fiance died in my 20s, and then 6 weeks later, my father died. And during that time, it was what nature and gratitude, but being out in nature is what got me through very difficult days and continues to do so. And we don't need to do anything. It's simply listening to a babbling brook, being around trees, and once again, there's so much science behind the power of trees and water. For more information on the power of trees, you could look up Forest Bathing by King Lee, wonderful book about the power of trees. And for water, we are biologically connected to water. So being in, around, listening to, underwater helps us to feel better. And a great book on that is called Blue Mind by Wallace Nichols. So when we harness the power of nature, it's one way to improve mental health. You could hike or do other things, but you don't need to. Simply being in nature heals.
Wow. You've given us so many wonderful tips, wonderful advice, wonderful resources. I want to read every single book you mentioned. So I will be making a list, and the show notes are going to be very long. There will be a lot of links, but also to your website because you have some wonderful books. I was talking about Feeling Good. I absolutely love it. So I'll be linking everything. And I just want to say that I'm grateful to you today that our paths have connected and that you spent the time and came on this podcast. So thank you for sharing all of your words of wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Anne Marie.